The International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism is a lot of syllables to answer on the phone. Hello, International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism, can I help you? If you can do it in one breath, you've achieved something. And yet, each of those words has an important meaning behind it. Start with the end, Judaism. It's our existential experience of being born into the Jewish people and our willing choice and excitement to celebrate and to create and to enliven and to be a rich part and bring forward the future of the Jewish people. Humanistic. Our focus is on this world, on the human experience, on our needs, on our happiness, on what we can know and what we can celebrate. Secular. Again, our focus on this life and on the power of the individual to decide for themselves how they want to organize in a community, in a congregation, or even as an individual celebrating their autonomy. 4, celebrating that we are not simply on behalf of something, that we simply celebrate an identity by saying something, but we do something. Sherwin would always say that you are your actions and not your words, and we are not simply an institute that talks about secular humanistic Judaism, we do it. Institute. We wanted to have a building, an establishment, an idea, a presence in the Jewish world, in our movement, and for the people who need us. Even those who may never find their home in our movement, we have provided for them a positive, humanistic, Jewish, secular, and emotional connection. And finally, international. It was always envisioned as being beyond the city of Detroit, being beyond the United States, even being beyond this continent into Israel and beyond. And so here we have the International Institute for Secular Humanistic Judaism, every word rich with meaning. And every student who has come through our program has taken those words and has adapted them to their own use, created their own materials, led their own ceremonies, and really established us as a presence in the Jewish world all over the world. And so I'd like to ask all those who are in the audience who have graduated from an institute program, be it the leadership program, the educators program, the spokesperson program, or the rabbinic program, to please stand and be acknowledged at this time. Please give them a round of applause. We have 3 more leaders who are graduating this evening. And we don't give only one title, we give you 3. We give you the title of leader, the title of Wegweiser, and the title of Madrich. We celebrate our Jewishness in many languages, in many residences. And so as each of our graduates come forward, they will share with you their individual story. I will have the opportunity to sign their ordination certificate, which has already been signed by our international co-dean Yaakov Malkin and the dean of our Israeli section, Rabbi Sivan Malkin-Mas. But it will be my special pleasure to tell you a little bit about each of the graduates before they speak for themselves. Our first graduate this evening is Lois Alpern, and there are many members of her community who have traveled with her here, not only for the colloquium, but also to celebrate Lois. Lois is a wonderfully nice person. If you haven't had a chance to meet her, you'll know who she is when she comes up to read, and you'll come up to her afterwards and you'll say, Mazel Tov, congratulations, tell me about yourself, because she has so many things to say. She's been a dedicated student in the Institute. She's been a dedicated mover and shaker in humanistic Judaism. She was telling me this evening that she had been familiar with Sherwin for many, many years. Her growing up in Detroit certainly helped. Having family here, she would come into the temple whenever she were in town if she could find the opportunity. And when the opportunity presented itself in North Carolina, where she was living, to begin her own congregation, she jumped at it. She was one of the founding members of this organization, helping to organize it from the very beginning. And when they needed a leader, when they needed someone to step forward and begin to take on more responsibility, not just to organize, but to celebrate and to counsel and to educate and to inspire, they turned to Lois. And she came to Detroit and she traveled all over for seminars, and she's done her work and she's here to graduate. And I want to invite her to this bima to read for you her thoughts on this momentous occasion. Now, those of you who know Lois and who know her life know that there's someone who's not here to celebrate with her, who should have been. And yet she has soldiered through. It has been an amazing process to watch her face this personal loss and pay attention to others and look to their needs and celebrate them and also meet her responsibilities and work and work and work to be ready for this graduation. It has been a special pleasure for me to watch this combination of responsibility and empathy be exemplified in this one person. And so I invite you to give her a round of applause for Lois Alpern as she's come forward to be ordained as a Madrid, Wegweiser, and leader.
Adam gave you my whole speech. I want to take a moment to thank my friends, my family, and colleagues for joining me this evening to celebrate my graduation. I'll begin with my oldest and dearest friend, Sorely Broida. We've probably been through more than anybody together. She's been a mentor, a friend, a companion, a supporter, a kick in the rear. My daughter wanted to know why I mentioned her first. I've known Sorely almost my entire life. We met in the 7th grade, and that was many years ago. In many ways, none of us would be here if it was not for the support of the people around us. All of us here, all of us graduates, as well as our congregations, place a high priority on community and family. Nowhere else is this more evident than at this event this evening. It took a substantial amount of effort to support and to love and to get each of us here. I wish to thank Rabbi Sherwin Wine for his support over many years. Can't do that. But especially to Rabbi Miriam Jairus, my friend and mentor. She helped me through 4 years of midrasha training, the ups, the downs, the questions, the doubts, the papers, the more papers, and so many more questions related to the preparation leading up to this evening. I thank you, Miriam. I'd like to thank my daughters, Julie, Marlo, and Stacy, for sharing this journey with me. They pushed me on and they kept me going when I didn't want to. And to Marlo, who is here this evening. Although she doesn't understand my Judaism, you support me nonetheless, and I love you for that. Thank you. And I thank you, Gila and Ken, true friends through this whole ordeal. You don't know Reverend Robin Renentia, but she provided invaluable support and taught me to allow myself permission to be my own person. This all began with a series of meetings with Sherwin Wine dating back to around 1975. Over the years, we ran into each other at informal and unscheduled meetings at this temple. We discussed family, our common backgrounds, and philosophy. In 2002, we had a more formal meeting when he visited our fledgling congregation in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. We spoke about what had been accomplished in the short time of our existence, what needed to be accomplished in general, and his vision for me in particular. Take care of membership, he said. You do that job and you'll do it best. You're the one for it. And build that Sunday school that nobody wants except you. The opposition will come around in time. We started the school in a small way. My daughter met with our 5 Sunday school children in the back foyer of the fellowship hall during our Friday night celebrations. At that time, we had 7 families in our congregation that soon became 13. Today, we have 54 plus families in our congregation, plus 39 children in our Sunday school. Returning back to my discussion with Sherwin, and by the way, he said, it's time for you to begin the Madrachim program. Me? I'm too old, I said. I've been a leader. I just want to be a teacher now. He looked at me directly in the eye, with that smile he has, and that chuckle kind of thing that he does. Your first class, Life Cycle Ceremonies, begins in 3 weeks. See you there. And he walked away to speak with some others. 3 weeks later, I met him again in Michigan. During the last session of the Life Cycle Ceremonies, Rabbi Tamara Colton asked each of us for our response and reactions to the very intensive training of the past week. I learned so much, I said. I'm ready to undertake the challenges and joys of life cycle ceremonies. But I said, I will not officiate at funerals. We have a congregant in Chapel Hill that loves to do that sort of thing, and he's perfect for the job. Funerals just aren't for me. Little did I know that when the voicemail was awaiting me when I returned home that evening. This is Sam Sheps, said the voice. I'm here from Vancouver. My father, Dr. Cecil Sheps, is dying. I want you to meet with him as soon as possible. Tonight will be just fine. And so it began on the phone. Remember that? I was hysterical. Asking all the right questions, having just learned them, and how to provide that support and appropriate responses. All the while, a little voice in my head was saying, you don't want to do this. In the meantime, I said, I have just the right person for you, Sam. He'll help you. You're the right person. We've spoken for a long time. I don't want anyone else. I'll be right over, I said. Dr. Shep, provost of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, was indeed in the final stages of his life. I touched his arm, and his head turned toward me, but he didn't open his eyes. I said hello and returned to the other room with his only son. Sam and I spoke well into the night, calmly. I was beginning to write my first eulogy, a celebration of life. The first thing I did when I got home at who knows what time was to call Sherwin. There are going to be 1 million people there, I said. Sherwin laughed and made a comment about the unique predicaments that seem to befall me on a regular basis. By the way, he said, be sure to end your celebration with a line or two of Hebrew. They love that. He did. He said that. And then he tutored me on the phone because he didn't like the way I was saying it. Anyway, this was the most spiritual, life-altering experience I have ever had. I truly felt the power within us, the power of life and the dignity of death. I felt the strength in myself at that celebration and felt the strength in Sam Sheps. There have been many life cycle ceremonies since that one, including one last month for Doug, my friend and partner of over 30 years. There are other ways to celebrate life. I see the wonder of the generations through the work I do with the bar and bat mitzvah students. I meet with each one for 2 years, working through their family roots, Jewish and personal values, contemporary Jewish history, and of course, secular humanistic Judaism. These celebrations are the most exciting part of humanistic Judaism for me. I can watch and actually see the thinking that's taking place in these young minds. The learning is amazing and wonderful. My granddaughter's baby naming ceremony brought life full circle for me. Each celebration is stored in my heart. Many aspects of being a madricha, I have found out, are not always easy. But I always seem to learn something new about myself and people in general. Congregants question such things as the rituals of humanistic Judaism. Some challenge our philosophy. They think we have rituals. They forget about their history. How about a party on Saturday evening without a Havdalah celebration? One came to me the other day. Or a movie on Friday night without a Shabbat celebration. I don't know where they think these up. 6 months is long enough to prepare for my son's bar mitzvah because my son is truly a bright and gifted young man. Humanistic Judaism can be learned and understood in a matter of weeks, said another. These are just a sample of the issues, questions, and challenges that I have and will continue to address. Where to from here? This is about new beginnings for all of us. I want to understand the power of inquiry and inner strength. I don't like to write speeches, and I can't sing a note, but I love kids, especially my grandchildren. Watching them experience the same life cycles that I have watched others go through is a particularly exciting thought. Perhaps I will experience the joy of their bat mitzvahs. The wonders of life cycle ceremonies are my calling. Robin, my pastoral counseling counselor, told me that a new beginning need not be in the wings today. I can be open to any new experience. So this is where I am. I will move forward with the Society for Humanistic Judaism, for my congregation, and perhaps a little Havara or two on the side in some of the neighboring cities. I'll move forward with my new role in the congregation and look forward to new beginnings wherever they may be. Thank you.
There are 2 steps to our graduation tonight. The first is the sharing of the smell of sweet spices, which marks the end of Shabbat and the beginning of the week, in this case, the end of your training and the beginning of your life as a madricha, as a wegweiser. And secondly, our traditional ordination gift, and that is a kiss and an embrace in tribute to you and your wonderfully caring heart and your generosity in serving our movement. Mazel tov. Our second graduate this evening is Peter Gilbert, all the way from Toronto with many of his friends and congregants with him. Now, Peter's story is quite a story. He's had, in a way, 2 lives, and this is the culmination, the peak of the second one. His first life was that of a Presbyterian minister, where he served for many, many years in congregations, in Sunday schools, counseling, helping, and leading. He came to Toronto many, many years ago and became involved there in interfaith dialogue between Jews and Christians. And I was told that along his path he became very interested in Jewish culture and Jewish civilization and perhaps even Jewish identity. And yet his Jewish friends on the interfaith dialogue said, "Stay on that side, we need you there." And so he was involved in this interfaith dialogue. He decided to pursue advanced degrees in Hebrew at a master's degree level. And when that wasn't enough, he continued on into the PhD program. I understand he was the oldest PhD student in his program. But he graduated in the Department of Holocaust Studies, having studied anti-Semitism in the writings of a famous man. And he brought that knowledge to bear to Orenu congregation, because as he found his second partner in life, he found a new identity and a new beginning. And when Sherwin contacted him and invited him to explore the leadership program and training, it was with open arms that he embraced this new peak experience in this second life that he is enjoying. And so it is with great joy that I invite to this stage to accept his ordination as a Madrich, Peter Gilbert.
Well, in preparation for tonight, Adam said to me that I should write a short speech of perhaps 5 minutes or so, so I tried to stay with that. And in any case, here I am, and I would like to say a few words to all of you. First of all, I want to say how proud and privileged I feel to be here this evening. I'm proud because I have been able to attain the status of Madrid, and I'm privileged because the International Institute of Secular Humanistic Judaism has seen fit to grant me this status on the basis of my studies. I want to extend thanks to various parties, along with some comment concerning what I have learned as a result. First, I must thank Orenu congregation of Toronto. My wife Santa and I have belonged there for at least 15 years, and we have enjoyed the fellowship and friends that we have made there. For myself, I have been privileged over those years to lead various discussion groups on various associated various subjects, and I'm very pleased that this kind of activity is something that I can engage in, because I love to sit with about 6 or 8 or even 10 people and discuss with them a certain subject to see what they know about it and to try to show them what they might still learn. For undertaking the studies that have been required for becoming a Madrig, I'm especially thankful this evening to Karen Levy, who encouraged me to do this. When I decided to proceed, you have already known that I was a Presbyterian minister, and then I decided that I should resign my ordination in order to become Jewish. So now I am a member of the Jewish community. Secondly, then, I must thank the International Institute for receiving me as a candidate. Although my years with Orenu and working in the Jewish community have gained me much knowledge of Judaism and Jewish life, the courses that I have taken here in the International Institute have provided a much more comprehensive picture of the philosophy and content of secular humanism. I'm especially thankful to Rabbi Tamara Colton, who taught me the course in philosophical guidance, and I am then also thankful that Rabbi Adam Shalom has taken over the supervision of my work. But I then must say that I'm especially indebted to Rabbi Sherwin Wine, not only for his personal interest in my background and my work, but more particularly for his own vast knowledge of all aspects of Jewish life, which he imparted both to me and to the other students who were with me. We have suffered a great loss with his death because of his tireless devotion to the cause of secular humanistic Judaism. And there is no one that can really replace him, but I know that the movement will go on because we see here tonight and at this colloquium and at others that I have attended, people who are interested and want this kind of thing in their Jewish life. We have suffered, with this work then that I have done here, I feel much more confident to make a useful contribution to my home congregation of Arenu. And I'm sure that in the future they will learn some new things from me because I've learned a lot of new things here. Finally, I would be amiss if I did not thank and mention the one person who has been a great inspiration to me, namely my wife, Santa, who is there present in the audience tonight. And would Santa please stand up? Santa was born in Germany, and when Santa was about 14, her mother recognized that when Hitler came to power, that he didn't intend that he would be fooling around. And so Santa's mother sent her to England, and later, before the war began, Santa was able to bring her brother and her own parents out from Germany to England. And so they came finally over here to Canada when she married her first husband, Lionel. Santa and I have for 4 times visited the town in Germany where she was born, and there I have learned many things about her past, and I know that she herself was a very able student, for she was written up in a number of different books. So that then Santa herself is someone to deal with. Secondly, then, I also want to say that one of the marvelous things that has happened to Santa is that after the war, or really quite a time later after the war, she discovered that she had a cousin in Israel. And so she went with her first husband there, and she has been to Israel about 11 times, but I have been very fortunate to go with her to visit her cousins and other relatives there about 5 times. So through these things then, I have learned a great deal at a personal level about what it means to be Jewish. And therefore, I'm very thankful to my own wife, Santa, but I'm also very thankful to all those in Arenu who have been my friends and who have encouraged me in many ways and helped me along my way in becoming Jewish. So then, tonight, I am very grateful to all of you for what you have given to me in letting me become a madrik in the movement. Thank you all very much.
Now, our third graduate this evening, when he graduates, will hold a particular distinction. He will hold the new world record for the longest process through the leadership program. Now, sitting on that wing is a man named Ed Klein, who is the current record holder. But in just a few minutes, there will be a new record holder. Now, this is not to say that he simply took some seminars and then vanished. He has been tremendously active in our movement as a leader, functioning without the title. Harold Launder was a founding member of the Minnesota Society for Humanistic Judaism, now or Emet. He is a leader in his field. He is a leader in his private life, of course, but most importantly for us, he's a leader in our movement. Now, I spoke to him before this event began to get a sense of his background, because he has been in our leadership program for so long that he was done with the seminars before I even started taking them. And every question I would ask, he would say, "It's in my speech. It's in my speech." And yet he assures me that it's 6 minutes long. And so it's time to show me. So I invite Harold Launder forward to accept his ordination as a madrich in our movement.
At the end of my speech, I'm going to be bold enough to give you all some advice, which for such a sophisticated crowd takes a lot of courage. I come from Minneapolis, and we've been in the news a couple times here the last couple months, and had some impact on my traveling here. Number one, we had a bridge collapse, so I was the only one here nervous driving over a bridge heading to the airport. And you have to be nervous in Minneapolis Airport if you go to the bathroom now, as you may know. Or if you take too, quote-unquote, wide of a stance. So it was tough getting here. And then I'm sure most of you will be visiting the Minneapolis St. Paul Airport next year. You know what's coming up? The Republican conventions. So you'll all be visiting, I'm sure. I was born in a very Orthodox Jewish family. I grew up in Minneapolis, and I grew up in a very Jewish neighborhood. I think most people here are very surprised when I tell them a story. The neighborhood that I grew up in, if there were 30 kids in elementary school, there would be 2 kids there on a Jewish holiday. It was that Jewish. Sounds like you'd expect in Brooklyn. So why were all the Jews in Minneapolis living in such a close area? Well, Minneapolis was one of the most well-known anti-Semitic towns in the world, and certainly in the United States. And you're only allowed to live in certain areas. You couldn't belong to the AAA, etc. A couple years ago, on Martin Luther King Day, I was recruited to give a tour of Minneapolis for both the black and the Jewish community, and I was a little bus, and I had a little microphone. It was kind of fun. But there's still posts there that mark the areas where Jews couldn't buy outside of those areas. I grew up as an Orthodox kid. You know, the rabbi invited me, a special student, to come to his house on Saturday afternoons to learn how to lay tefillah. That was a big honor. And then, I won't go through the whole story, but I ended up belonging to the First Unitarian Society in Minneapolis, where the minister was a man named Corin Rishin. Have you know Corin? Corin was a very good friend of Sherwin's, and was really a very good personal friend of mine. I got a very nice note from him just recently. He's with the Ethical Culture Society in New York City now. And I was a pretty active member at the Unitarian Society, and then guess what happened? Sherwin came to speak there one day. Can't believe you guys didn't pick up on that. Sherwin came. I listened to Sherwin, I talked to him afterwards, and I decided to leave the Unitarian Society, and we got involved with a number of people, and we flew Miriam out there. She remembers their names, Larry Garfin, who since has passed away, Muriel Stern, Gail Farber. And we started our Twin Cities group, and here we are 20 years later. We're still a group. We have about 40 family members. We get about a little over 100 at our Seder, 120 or so at our high holiday services, and we're still out there. We have our school. We only have about 10 kids, but we're proud of it, and it's kind of a fun adventure. And over the last 20 years, I've written more high holiday services and Seders, and I think the other people who've done, can I ask a Hebrew question? Is madriching? I've been madriching for a number of years, even though I'm not a madrich. And I've done more bar and bat mitzvahs, and it's really kind of a neat thing to do for those of you who are looking for other things to do. I was meeting with the kids, and I've gotten to know one kid who taught me how to do PowerPoint last year, and another one that taught me about music. I don't know anything about the violin. A young 12-year-old in our congregation who's really a world accomplished, potentially a musician. And it's been a pretty neat experience, meeting a lot of wonderful people. I've given innumerable talks to the community on humanistic Judaism, speaking to a variety of groups, and depending on who you're talking to, you get whatever response. If you're talking to a Jewish group, they say you're not Jewish. If you talk to a humanist group, they say you're too Jewish. Speak to college students, and last year the St. Paul Community Center had a series on different types of Judaism, and they did have me come and speak on humanistic Judaism, and the guy said that we had by far the largest crowd of any in their series. We've had a series of wonderful presidents of our congregation, many of whom have been on the boards here. Mike Persland, who's an attorney with the Twin City Legal Aid Society. Phil Griffin, who's a retired philosophy professor. Quaker, our only non-Jewish president. And Margot Fox, who's present tonight, who's our current president. So why in the world did it take me 20 years to go through this? Very early on, when I got involved with humanistic Judaism, I started attending these seminars, and again, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I see some of the people in this room who I took seminars with, Eva and Karen, and where's Mike from D.C. Really is sobering when Mike told me he's retiring from his Madrid stuff. But the problem is I have another career. I'm a physician. I'm a medical oncologist, a cancer specialist in Minneapolis, and I can honestly say, and somewhat humbly or whatever, that I'm sure I have about the busiest practice in town, and my medical practice has kept me really busy. And though I had taken all of the required courses, I never turned in my paper. And every time Sherwin would visit, he'd say, "Here, I'll get your damn paper done," you know. And I was busy. I didn't have a deadline, so it would sit out there, and I didn't need it. You know, I could still lead my group, and everybody was happy, and nobody really complained that I didn't have this paper. Over the years, it was kind of a joke in my family. We get phone calls all the time. My kids would look at me and say, "Dad, someone's on the phone and wants you to marry them." And I'd always say, "I'm already married." A few years ago, Sherwin visited us in Minneapolis, and we had our Hanukkah play. And I had written the play, and he said, "Why don't you just turn that in? That would be your project." So it sat there for years. I never turned it in. I had two personal anecdotes to tell about Sherwin. I had the opportunity to take two major trips with Sherwin. Number one is I went to New York City when he led us on a walking tour of the East Side, a wonderful experience. There's nothing like walking around the East Side of New York with Sherwin as your guide. He's a wonderful walker, and it was a great experience. I know the exact date of that because I have a picture of myself on the top of the world, and my wife on the top of the World Trade Center. It was September 11th, 2000, one day to the year before the World Trade Center. That's when you had that convention. I also had a chance to go to Israel with the Humanistic Judaism group and touring Israel with Sherwin and picnic trying that trip too. It was really a wonderful experience. My wife left early. The group was a 17-day trip or something. She couldn't stay the whole time. She's a physician also. By the way, she's on call tonight, and that's why she said, and she told me she had 3 admissions. She was still at the hospital when I called her earlier. But my wife flew back early, and Sherwin was right next to her flying back. She was a non-Jew leaving all alone, and they asked her what she was doing in Israel. And she tried to explain she was at a secular humanist conference, but didn't sound right. She said there was a couple Orthodox rabbis sitting right in front of Sherwin, and the whole flight back he was pushing his knee up against their seats. She told me that she felt bad. I could just see Sherwin loving it. But anyway, this year we had a couple of changes. I think many of you may have met some of the people from Minneapolis who are here today. Margot Fox and Faith Orland, both of who are now on the board of the Human Society. And they nudged me enough that I finally put together a packet of things and mailed it to Miriam to quote-unquote qualify. And now I'm here qualified. By the way, I'll introduce the other person who has a Minnesota connection who is sitting in our row, Mark Abbott, who I just met tonight, who's a Lutheran minister who has taken groups to Israel for years and just came here to learn something. He has 2 kids in Minneapolis. That's how we connected. So what's the message I have for you? That's the one thing I feel a little bad about this wonderful story I just told you. Well, the message is that I feel bad that Sherwin, who egged me on so many times to finish this paper, wasn't here to see me do it. Miriam, you know how many times he would call me up, somewhat jokingly, and then eventually I think he was just frustrated and sick of it. You know? And he'd say, "Why don't you turn this in?" So my message is, if any of you have something you really want to do, and I think we all do it. Because if you want to go to a play with your daughter or something, guess what? You might not be able to go to that play next week. And I feel a little bit guilty. Jewish guilt is pretty ubiquitous in this room. But that Sherwin, after all that egging me on, I finally got around to turning those papers in 3 months after he passed away. But it's really a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Well, you did it.